Right, so we're here on a fresh world to go over the next data pack. So I've pulled out another one from my main project. So again, just to reiterate, all of the data packs that I'm releasing are from a big, larger project. And I've pulled them out, reworded them, reworked them a little bit so that they function on their own. The one we're going over today that you might have seen are some of my custom enchants. So there are a few different tiers to the enchants and a unique way to craft them. So starting off, that's a bit better. So starting off, we need a soul campfire, block of amethyst, and then we need to surround it in crying obsidian. 2 levels so that we form a crucible. So this is our enchant table, if you will, our main mechanism by which to now enchant our weapons. So every enchant requires 2 things. A catalyst item, so that's these singular items, so ender pearl, phantom membrane, with a skeleton skull, nether star, with a rose, and then also a material item, so a full stack of either amethyst, if we use an ender pearl, blaze powder for a phantom membrane, chorus fruit with a skeleton skull, shulk vein with a nether star, or spider eye with a rose. Then, to actually choose your enchants, you'll need an anvil, and you need to spend a little bit of experience naming your catalyst item. So for instance, if we rename this ender pearl into storm, and go ahead and chuck all of our ingredients along with our weapon into our crucible, wait a few seconds, and there we go. The weapon's now enchanted, and we have storm 1. So if we go ahead, put out some husks, we can see what this new enchant does. So a few hits, 2, 3, and they get struck by lightning. Cool. But then what if you want to change or upgrade? Because, like I said, there are multiple tiers to the enchants. So for instance, this is tier 1, hence storm 1. If you use a phantom membrane and blaze powder, you get tier 2. Chorus fruit and with a skeleton skull makes tier 3. And then shulk vein and nether star is the max level. But then we also have a spider eye and a wither rose. So for instance, if we throw all of our ingredients in again, we'll rename this to storm. Along with our spider eyes that I threw too far. There we go. We can wait for it to re-enchant, and now our weapon has Storm PvP. So, when you do pick a new enchant, it does replace the previous. You can't stack enchants, just a little balancing mechanic. You also might have noticed that in my hand, there's some particle effects. So I've done my best to make it look like the weapon is glowing, or reflecting whatever nature of the enchant it is. So this being lightning, it shimmers and sparkles with the sparks, I think they're called, for particles, and it is dynamic to your rotation. I've gone for it in first-person mode over third-person mode, so it should always be around the tip or edge of the sword. Perfect. Okay, and then as for this actual enchant, so we have Storm PvP. Well, we hit our husks 3 times. Well, okay. We hit our new batch of husks a few times. We hear the particle effects, so it's triggering, but unfortunately nothing's getting struck by lightning. So the difference between a normal version and PvP, as you might imagine, PvP is looking for another player to hit. Since there are no players to hit, the enchant doesn't actually summon any lightning. Okay, so again, there's 4 modes of regular enchants, and then a 5th PvP-centered mode that is meant for attacking other players. Why don't we go over a few more enchants? So there are about 30 different enchants, and they range from triggering on attack, to triggering on taking damage, to block, shifting, and even sprinting. So, for instance, we'll try out a tier 2 enchant. We'll rename the Phantom Membrane Healer. Cool. We'll throw all our items into our little crucible. Wait a few seconds. Perfect. I'm also a bit curious with the particle effect, because sometimes it triggers, sometimes it doesn't. I've done my best. I can't figure out why it doesn't trigger. I'm assuming there's just too many particles loaded or something like that. Or the sonic boom, the warden particle effect, doesn't always trigger depending on your orientation. And its triggering orientation, because it is 2D. So for instance, if you're looking at it like a line segment, there is no particle effect. But anyway, we now have Healer 2. So what does this do? Well, if we sprint quickly, we create an area effect cloud that we consume to get regen. The sprint, we get regen as long as we're in the cloud, and it quickly disappears. Now, if you're constantly sprinting, you don't just spam the clouds, it's triggered on a quick double tap. Cool. So that's one of the more utility enchants. Now, when we look at tier 3, what to do? You know what, we'll just go with freeze, I think. No, we'll do a sneak enchant. So we'll do assassinate. Trying to remember them all off the top of my head. Cool. So, with a skeleton skull, chorus fruits, and our item of choice to enchant. You can enchant anything you like. Well, except for the catalyst items, obviously, because they get consumed. So we have Assassinate 3. Now, this one is a shift ability. So we shift, and eventually, after a little bit of a wind-up, there we go. We hear a sound effect, and we get Strength 7 for, a few seconds. So the idea is you sneak up on someone, you shift, and eventually you'll proc it just in time for a sneak attack. And then it'll fade away. And then, depending on the tier of the enchant, so for instance, we have Assassinate 3, so we get Strength 7. If it was a weaker version, well, you'd only get Strength 3 or maybe 5, I believe, are the versions. I think it's 3, 5, 7, and 9 with the max level. And then PvP, I can't quite remember. I think it's not too OP. Granted, you can obviously just use these since they're not directly related to damaging a player, if you will. So the interaction element comes from you just shifting. So I think I might have tied in something else for the effect. Again, main project, made these a while ago. Pull them out so that I can get something out to anyone who wants to, mess around with my creations. So you will have to forgive me, but I don't have them all in writing. It's going to be fun to write up the projects. Okay, so then for a max enchant, what should we go with? Well, we haven't done a block or damage enchant, have we? But better or worse, I think Inferno, if I can remember how to spell it, is another one. So Inferno, Shulk Vein, and our weapon. Oh, that was a quick enchant. We got Inferno Max. I believe this is us taking damage. So I'll hop on over to Survival. And you can hit us, and hopefully something happens in retaliation. No? Alright, this is then on defeat. So after you beat a few mobs, yeah, we go, we trigger its effect. So it ignites a whole bunch of different entities in a 3x3 around them. You can see it even got someone over here. So again, there are 30 different enchants spread over 5 different tiers, which I can't really show off because I've been enchanting the same item. So there's Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Max, and PvP. And then there is also several different modes of activation. There are several enchants that work by hitting, several enchants that work by actually defeating mobs, then several for getting hit, several for blocking, several for shifting, and then only two for sprinting. So the sprinting one's nice and easy. We might as well go over the other one if I can get back up here, which I have just the right amount of blocks. Granted, I do have to go back into creative to grab out some catalyst items. There we go. We'll have to make do with another sword. Perfect. There we go. Traveler Max. And we also got The World Endures. So I have not deleted a certain file from the data pack. This is part of another mechanic. Huh. Right. Okay. So what does Traveler Max do? Well, if we go game mode, survival, you can see we're missing some hunger. We equip our Traveler weapon. Eventually, we should regain our hunger from sprinting. So Traveler is definitely utility. You sprint long enough and you will feed yourself. Therefore, essentially, if you have the Traveler enchant, you can automatically regain all your hunger just from sprinting. I think at max, it works out to equivalents. Any of the lower levels, you get a little bit less than what you actually use to sprint and trigger it. Anything else I need to go over? Nah. So Catalyst, again, Soul Fire Campfire, Soul Campfire? Is it just a Soul Campfire? I think it's just Soul Campfire. Yeah, so Soul Campfire is the bottom. Then you want an amethyst core surrounded by 8 crying obsidian. This forms your crucible. And then inside here, you can chuck in any item you want to enchant, along with the different items utilized to actually enchant it. So for instance, we have Amethyst Shard and Ender Pearl is Tier 1, Phantom Membrane and Blaze Powder make up Tier 2, Forest Fruit with Skeleton Skull for Tier 3, Shulk Vein and Nether Star for max level enchants, and then Spider Eye and Wither Rose for your PvP variations. All of which you need, again, 64 of the material item, and then a single item named in the enchantment you want to actually use for the catalyst item. So Ender Pearl with Skeleton Skull, Phantom Membrane, Nether Star, or Wither Rose. Drop them into your crucible, and you'll enchant your weapon. Fairly simple.